Hi everyone, and welcome to the Life with Goldie podcast, where we travel around the world talking to all the Golden Hoodie recipients about their Trailblazer ecosystem story and where they came from. I'm Mia Pacey, and I'm your host, also a Trailblazer Golden Hoodie recipient, but today we're with Sarah Pilzer. Thanks for joining us, Sarah.
Thanks for having me, Mia.
It's great to speak to someone also across the world again, so I love being virtual. It connects us and makes the world a lot smaller so we can have these conversations. I really enjoy that, so thanks for being with us. You got your Golden Hoodie in 2020 and similarly a virtual experience. But today we're talking about your story, your journey, inspiring others, what makes you unique. So would you be able to take us on that journey? Where did Salesforce come into your life and how did you get here?
Yeah, I first started with Salesforce like a lot of folks. I hadn't heard of Salesforce, and then at my company I work for a nonprofit in the participatory arts sector, and we had an old database. I was hired to sort of like work with that database because I actually come from a science background. So I studied marine biology and I'm a big data nerd, so charts and graphs were my thing. So they kind of hired me to do that, and then in that process of like using the old database, we wanted to transition to something a little bit more modern, and that's when Salesforce appeared in my life as going to be the new system, and I was tasked with sort of managing that transition, and I didn't know anything about Salesforce at all, so I started doing the Googling thing, trying to figure out what to learn, and I found out about the World Tours events, and there was one. My company is based in Massachusetts, and there was a World Tour coming up in Boston, and this was in 2017. It would have been springtime, and it just coincided perfectly with like as I was starting to learn about Salesforce. I was like, oh, there's this free thing. I guess I'll go to it and see what it's all about. And I showed up and it was just like blown away with, there were so many people there. There was like Astro was dancing in the hallways, and I was like, what is going on? I was like,
it's so amazing, isn't it?
But,
it's like,
yeah. But I was like, what is this? I need to know everything about it I possibly can. And sort of from there, I just like dove in headfirst and got connected with a local user group, started Trailhead, and just sort of went from there. Yeah.
That's amazing. So you just fell into this amazing event that's just, I've also had that experience where you don't know what quite Salesforce is, not quite sure. And then it's like, boom, you're in this event where everything is so amazing and the production is so high production value and everything is just on point. The information is so relevant. The sessions are like just incredible with the people that you could potentially see. You're like, what is this shiny new object? I want to know more.
The session that really stuck out in my head was Mike Gerholt and Jillian Bruce's Essential Habits for New Admins, because I was like, oh, I'm a new admin. I should go to this. And they were so enthusiastic. If you've if you've ever talked to them or seen them at an event, they're just like bubbling with enthusiasm, and I'm like, I want to be like them. And so I was like, an admin, that's what I am, that's what I'm going to be. And I went back to my company and was just like, okay, this is more than just some software. There's something here. And a lot of what we do at my work is really community based as well. We're about bringing music and dance into people's lives, into their communities, and it's the same kind of thing. And so it just made a lot of sense to me that Salesforce is more than the technology; it's the people that you're working with too. And that's just, it clicked.
It is, and I think it's like everyone's equal. Everyone has the same possible options. Everyone has the same chances to get into this ecosystem and learn. It just takes a few, like you said, you got that moment where you said, this is it. This is what I want to do, and commit yourself to it. What were your first kind of like steps? Did you get certified? Did you go to boot camp? Like, what were your first steps after those world tour to learn it?
Yeah, I dove into Trailhead, and I was like, I'm going to be a ranger. That's what I want to do. And
Yes.
I started doing badges as much as I could. I was, doing, luckily my work is really supportive, so I got to do some at work time, but I was doing them at home too. Like any moment I was on there hitting the trails. And I made a commitment to go to Dreamforce the next fall. So that was the fall following um, that world tour, and um, I decided that I was going to do the certification at Dreamforce. And I did some studying, but I went to Dreamforce. I was having a great time. Took my cert and totally failed it completely.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Same.
yeah, it was, I was like, kind of like, oh, bummer. I guess I need to go back and look at this more. And so, unlike I didn't reschedule right away. In fact, I ended up then just working the next, like I took a whole year and decided to do it again at the next Dreamforce, partially because like there's a discount for doing certs at Dreamforce, so that was appealing, and I could get my company to pay for it if I did it at Dreamforce. And
Yeah.
so I think what really helped me, though, over the course of that year was just hands-on experience. We were in the process of building out a lot of customization and a lot of, we run summer camp programs for adults and families. And so I was really, really busy trying to get all that up and running over the course of the year. So I didn't really even have time to study for a certification during that period. I was just like, working with our end users, working with our participants to like put this in place. And it turns out that that really helped me get a lot of those skills that I needed so that the next year when Dreamworks rolled around, I was ready and I took my admin cert and passed it.
Congratulations.
So, a combination.
Yeah, it's a really good point to say that if you do fail, like as I said, I failed as also my first try, and it was at a boot camp. It was boot camp, so I definitely it's something that you don't just it's a path that we all go through, and it's not to be shied away from, and embrace it. Like we all have those moments where we're not successful at something, but you're right. I think your experience was unique because you use that experience within your work to then pass the exam, which is ultimately what the certifications do. They validate your knowledge in using the platform, and that's you're just like this complete use case for what it's meant to be. So thank you for sharing that. That's amazing.
Yeah.
We go back to the Golden Hoodie, and it was 2020, like we said. Some people have seen Golden Hoodie presentations, some have seen it in person. But would you be able to take us through your journey about, well, not journey, but your experience and presentation about the Golden Hoodie? Like, did you know? Was it a surprise? How was it presented to you? Take us through all that and what it felt like.
Yeah. So I was asked to participate in a series called Trailblazers Innovate, which was a virtual series that Salesforce put on in the fall of 2020. So this was after they decided there wasn't going to be a Dreamforce that year. The world tours had all been canceled. There was like no events happening. And so I think they wanted to like do something. And I was invited to be a guest, and I was like really excited. And I was like, yeah, of course, like I'll happily talk about, I think the topic was how we had pivoted during the pandemic, like in the beginning of the pandemic, like how Salesforce had helped us adapt to remote work, change what we were doing. And we had this whole, our story at my company was that we had to actually cancel all the programs for our summer that year. And we had to come up like on the fly really with a whole new system to get people to cancel or transfer to the next year and like develop that really quickly in Salesforce, as soon as it became clear that COVID was canceling everything. And so I was invited to just share that story as part of this series. And I was like, yeah, sure, I can totally do that. And I had been to events before. I had seen the Golden Hoodie presentations, and like I knew that was a thing, but like had absolutely no clue that this was that going to be that, I should say. Yeah. I was like completely clueless, which was great. And And they ended up shipping me a box, and they sent me an email, don't open the box. And I was sort of like, okay. Cool. And
You're so like good with that. Like, just if someone says don't open the box, and you're just like, okay, that's fine. I'll be like, oh my goodness, what's inside the box?
Yeah, well, the funny part was I wasn't. Yeah, I wasn't home when the box arrived, so it wasn't even really a thing. It was just sort of like, I got it. It was like, oh yeah, okay, whatever. There was a box waiting for me, and so day of the interview comes, and they're doing the interview, and they're like, okay, go ahead and open your box, and I was like, oh my god, like this is, do you know what this is? Like, I literally ran around my house. It was only me and my partner were the only ones home because it was COVID. I didn't have anybody around, but I was like, do you know what this is? And they were like, a shiny hoodie? You know, and I was like, yes, it's a golden hoodie. And
that's amazing.
It was great. Yeah, it was really fun. And you know, we had to like film my reaction, which was really fun too. But it was, you know, there's a part of me that's like, I only just recently, this past spring, was able to finally go to an in-person event with my hoodie. So that was really fun too.
What was that like?
It was cool. It was Northeast Dreaming, which is one of our regional dreaming events over here in New England, and it was cool. I was a little bit shy about it, to be honest. Some people were like, hey, where's that hoodie? And I was like, oh, here it is, you know, and put it on. And then it was really fun just wearing it around. It's pretty comfortable. No, like, it's nice weight to it.
And it's reversible, so I mean, you get that option to be like, oh, I'm not feeling like super shiny today. Yeah, you could be like, I'm just gonna pop the hood.
Yeah. I like to roll the cuffs a little bit because the cuffs are a little bit long, so then you just get that little shine on the edge. Yeah,
it's just a pop of color. I do, yes, enjoy it. All the possibilities we have with the golden hoodie.
Yeah.
So we talked about coming into the ecosystem, learning on Trailhead, going to some events. How important is that Trailblazer community to your journey, to how you've come through the ecosystem? Like, what was it like for you?
Yeah, I would say the community is everything. You know, I have made so many genuine friends through my connection with the Trailblazer community through Salesforce. I'm really involved with the open source commons projects, which are nonprofit and educational focused sprints, where they've been virtual events. We've had in-person events in the past where people get together and work on just various projects. I'm involved with diversity, equity, and inclusion projects through that, and meeting those people and connecting with them and trying to make a difference in our community is so it keeps me going. Like the interesting conversations I've had with people about using technology for good in the world, and how to, like, it's really fun to just nerd out about Salesforce things.
Yeah.
Like, I am a nerd's nerd. Like, I love getting really technical, and I love talking about flow and how you built this and what's component are you using over there on that page, and like all of that stuff. And like having people who get that and want to talk about it with me is the most exciting thing. And I just love sharing that with people and sharing that excitement. And then I really love showing folks who are new to the ecosystem, here's what I've learned. I'll show you how to do that. Sure. Like, you want to know how to create a record triggered flow? Yeah, I'm happy to show you what I've done. And that there's just so much openness in the community and willingness to help out and generosity, and it makes me feel very at home, and has really given me not only confidence in my own skills and helped me learn new things, because there's always people who know more than I do, but given me a chance to give back and be part of that chain. And I think that's really important.
Yeah, I know. And I think it's like that, like you said, it's like that home. It's almost like we all speak the same language, right? Because you're
Yeah.
talking about flow. We all know what it is. We know exactly what you're speaking about. And I love that you do give back, because I've seen a couple of your ones with like, how have I solved that series? I'm like, oh my goodness, you're a genius. I have no idea how to do this flow. So I'm definitely going to hit you up later about flow.
Yeah,
But no,
anytime.
it is that inclusion, and everyone can be whatever they want to be in the ecosystem, because there's so many avenues to take.
Yeah.
Whether you want to be whatever you want to be, but giving back as well. I love the fact that when you give back to someone, then they are successful, they strive, and then it almost full circles, and you now need their help. I'm like, oh, this is awesome. Like in other ecosystems, it would be like super competitive, but we're like, oh, this is amazing. Now you can help me.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. You go learn this thing better than I could so that we can trade it, and then we'll all just help each other out.
Yeah, it's like now we have a new like economy of trade. Knowledge is the cheapest form of trade. It doesn't cost you anything, but someone else gains so much from it.
Yeah.
So Golden Hoodie, we get it. We scream around the house because no one else can hear us, and it's amazing and shiny. But after you got it, do you think anything's changed for you, like professionally or personally? Do you think anything feels different? What is it like now?
Yeah, I would say for me, I feel a little bit more responsible now. I had, or for setting a good, being a good role model in the ecosystem. And I had the experience of, I posted on Twitter a picture of a flow I had built, and it's very complicated and very complex. And I was like, oh, I worked really hard on this. And I got some feedback that, it was, as a Golden Hoodie, like I had a really large platform, right? And that I was sharing this flow that maybe didn't have all the best practices in it. And it was really interesting to me that, like, I think it's debatable what best practices are. There's different circumstances. You don't know the context. So, like, but I really did take it to heart that people are looking to me in a different way if you know about the Golden Hoodie program. And so, like, just having that does carry a little bit of weight that I hadn't thought about before is important, and I take that responsibility seriously. So, like, I do want to make sure that I am leading people in the right path and not leading them astray when I give advice, or that I'm just not, like, that I can stand behind what I'm sharing, I guess. I don't know if that makes sense, but
no, it does. And I think it is important. But you mentioned like people give feedback, but I guess everyone has to be considerate, you're right, of what the context was in that particular org, and why aspects of that flow should have been used to meet this example. Or even like my flow, like I got so super excited and it was like 3 little elements long, and someone's like, oh, you could have done that in 1. I'm like, yeah, but I did it.
But you did it. Right.
Yeah.
And I should be very clear that the overwhelming response to it was very positive. There were so many people being like, this is awesome, you did a great job, you got it working, it's so cool, that's very complex, wow, it's impressive. So all of that is to say, like, I did feel really buoyed up by the community because of that. But it just was a reminder that
we've got a platform.
I think when I first started out, I was like, I'm just like one little drop in this big ocean of Salesforce, and somehow I have now like bubbled a little closer to the surface of the ocean, and like people can see me now in a way that I think I don't always remember that there's people who are maybe like watching my Twitter account to see what I say, or I don't know, like it's interesting.
Yeah.
Also, I'm still very much like, I am just one little nonprofit admin, like, we're all, I guess like you said before, we're all equal here. So like, I try to be.
Yeah. I think that's what, I guess, the underlying message of the Ohana is. We're all equal. We try and make every opportunity equal for everyone. and give back to break down those, I guess, already created stigmas or, privileges. So I guess we are trying, and everyone has their unique aspect that they give back to the Ohana and the ecosystem. But I do see that your point of being Golden Hoodie, now people kind of recognize you. And that is a good thing, because we now know that we can come to you. You're open to sharing. You will be able to give advice where you feel like you are in your expertise. But yeah, ultimately we do remember that you are but you are the not-for-profit you are the admin for the not-for-profit. Like it's nothing, we're not the CEOs of the Salesforce here or the presidents. So yeah, no, I do. It's that humbling message, right? We've got a Golden Hoodie, but then break it down to our day jobs, and we are just what we do what we do. We do it, we think, quite well.
Yeah. And I try also, just to sort of recognize the privileges that I have, right? And like, okay, so maybe there are more people paying attention now, but that means I can use that platform to amplify other voices. And, there's Chris Duarte and Leah McGowan-Hare have the saying, be a multiplier. And I take that to heart a lot too, is like, I want to take whatever tiny little corner of a stage I have and share it with other people. So I try to recognize the spotlight when I see it, and then like shine it on other people.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. And that's the purpose, is just to share and boost other people, because, I mean, we didn't get, yourself, like you were saying, that the Trailblazer community gave you so much in your growth, that it's so unique for us in the ecosystem, and we want to make sure that growth continues, isn't it? That's, I guess, what I'm hearing as well. We talked about like the change, the Trailblazer community. You started out as an accidental admin, is what I was kind of hearing. What advice would you give, looking back on your career, people wanting to break in, or people feeling like they're in the accidental admin space, like similar to your story? What would you recommend to them? Yeah,
I think the biggest thing on my head right now, aside from get connected to the community, because that is the number one. If you're trying to break in to a new job, like knowing people who have positions open, who could be like, hey, this is what I know about Salesforce. Is it a good fit? People who can help you with mock interviews, doing resume reviews, all of that. There's lots of friendly people who want to help you get started. My friend Charisse has worked to create a space called GEMS in Tech. Look that up. It's really cool. GEMS, for primarily women of color wanting to break into the ecosystem. So shout out to that. But I think for me, it was sort of realizing I was really overwhelmed at first by knowing like there is so much to learn, and I felt like I kind of had to do it all. And it turns out I don't think that's true. I think there are pieces of Salesforce that are relevant to what my job is, and this is sort of more speaking to the accidental admins who are already in that role and trying to figure out where to go next. There are pieces that I've chosen to focus on, like automation, flow in particular. I happen to be a nonprofit world, so NPSP. I don't know anything about CPQ or Health Cloud or financial services. There's so many other things that I don't know about Commerce Cloud. And the sort of nerdy part of me wants to know everything, and I'm like, oh, I should study this, I should study that. But like being realistic about where to put my time and effort, I think has been helpful. You don't have to be a completionist necessarily. But like finding the piece that speaks to you is really cool, because there's going to be somebody who wants that expertise, and if you can sort of find your little niche, that has really worked for me. So. And how did you kind of understand what that niche bit of it was? I know that I completely agree with you. There's that, and now I'm an admin, I need to know absolutely everything the platform can do in my particular org. Even that is overwhelming, to be like service, sales, non-for-profit, NPSP, flow. Ugh. How did you first come to that realization that you're like, okay, let's start from this? Like, how did you figure that out? Yeah, I think it came up, I mean, I was pretty lucky to have a defined role at my job to like that I had to work on. So it was creating this custom object and sort of custom process for these camp programs. So I need to figure out, okay, first I'm going to figure out what custom objects are. Let's start there. Figure out how to add them to this. Like I was using that project as the driver for my knowledge and my learning. And a lot of that came from talking to the people, my coworkers, about what they needed. And they're like, we need something that can do X. And then I was like, okay, so I go and research what can do X. And I'm going to learn about that piece. And, in the beginning, that was Process Builder, actually. It was like, oh, that was the hot tool at the moment. I was using Process Builder to do like, when this record gets created, create a second record, related record of this other type, that kind of thing, because that's how the business process worked. And in that, I used that to learn about the automation tool. So I sort of figured out, oh, I need to know how this tool works in order to achieve this goal. And it sort of grew from there. And I found out, oh, I really like building automation. It's really fun for me. It works in my brain. Like that clicked. So I started focusing more on that, I guess. And there was a part of me that like really, and I still want to learn Apex and coding, because like as I learned more, it was like, okay, this is one layer. It's operating, there's all these different layers that Salesforce operates at, and which layer are you on? I sort of feel like I'm in that in between, halfway between configuration only admin and like coding admin, right? And I'm sort of doing a lot of declarative programmatic stuff like Flow, and that feels really comfortable to me. And I don't know, like I guess it was driven by the needs of my company, what I focused on.
Yeah, that's a really good point. That's exactly what I heard. Yeah, I definitely heard that focus on learning what you need for that particular project or that particular time in your org. Be okay to say, I don't know that yet.
Yes.
Go and learn it and then fix and then move on to the next topic. Don't be like, I need to learn all of Sales Cloud and then all of the automation differences and everything. Just, it's not that need up front. It's being okay to say, I'm going to go figure that out. And everyone be understanding that might take some time, but there are so many resources out there. So yeah, good advice. Start off with what you need to do for that project that's going on at the moment.
Yeah. It reminds me of, I like to cook in my free time, and I love getting kitchen gadgets and buying new kitchen gadgets, but I've limited myself to, I'm only allowed to buy it if I need it for a specific cooking project. I can't buy it in case I might use that cool gadget down the road, right? So like, yeah, you might want to learn about some cool new feature, but if you don't have an immediate use for it, maybe wait until it's relevant to a project you're working on.
Yeah, no, that's really good. And so you haven't had ever like the want to find a recipe just to justify the purpose of a Thermomix?
Well, there is that. And I was going to mention that having sort of personal projects that you can work on in a dev org on the side. I have now built out a whole like fake nonprofit that I use to like try out new things. And I'm like, ooh, that's a cool thing. I want to play with, dynamic forms, but I'm not necessarily ready to implement it in my office. Why don't I go ahead and use this sort of made up scenario to play with that? So I definitely do some of that as well.
Yeah, and I think that comes with experience. Like if you have now got your org down pat and you do have that drive to learn further, that's where those dev orgs are absolutely super fun. Like anything you could ever think of, you can build out and play with. I mean, there are some products that you can't get in a dev org or it's more difficult, but...
Yeah, because there's tons of things that we're never going to need at my company, so it's fun to have a place to play with that. Anyway.
Yeah, no, it's good. And then to dabble in our like terrible Apex code writing that I know I have not ever going to reveal to the world.
Yeah.
So we're coming to the point in the podcast where I do ask our fun question. So our fun question is, if you were an animal, what animal would you be and why?
Okay, so I've thought about this, and I would be an otter, which are my favorite animals.
I love them.
And mostly because they just look like they have fun all day and get to play in the water and swim around and do like somersaults underwater. And I love swimming. I love being in the water. It really appeals to me. They're really, really cute. And actually, that fake nonprofit that I mentioned is called the Otter Appreciation Society.
Amazing.
That is, I'm all about otters.
That's awesome. I know I love otters, and I saw them first when I was in California in Morro Bay, and I saw them just floating on their backs, like in and out of the surf. I was like, this is a lifestyle. Like, I could do this.
Oh, yeah. Right?
Like storing your food on your stomach whilst also floating and eating, and it's just my jam. I agree. No, well done. I enjoy that animal. That's a good one.
Yeah.
I do like to open up open mic session to yourself to share, promote, reiterate, bring light to, all of that. So over to you, Sarah. Whatever you want to say.
Great. I would just like to plug again, I mentioned the Open Source Commons Community Sprint project, and I would love to talk about that a little bit, and anybody who is in the nonprofit ecosystem or higher education ecosystem, please check us out, get involved with our projects. There's an incredible team headed by Corey O'Brien, who runs those. Dreamforce is coming up, and there's a lot of other dreaming events, and I would encourage people to submit sessions. I am really, really pro getting more diverse speakers out there. If you are in the Salesforce ecosystem, you have something to share that somebody will learn from, and we want to hear it. So no matter who you are, you have a story to tell, you have a tidbit of information to share, and the events need you. We need you to speak at them. That's in a lot of ways how I got started as well. So submit those sessions. And if you have questions about like what makes a good session, or if you want to bounce ideas off of me, I'm pretty active on Twitter. You can find me at Pilzer. I'm sure there'll be links in the show notes and whatnot. Yeah. But I'm always open to people's questions and connecting with folks. Yeah, so Open Source Commons is OSC.
Okay. And people can contribute to it, or is it like a project where you all come together and work on it?
Yeah, you can sign up. There's different projects happening underneath that umbrella, and each of those projects are volunteer run and based. We usually gather about 3 times a year. We've been doing virtual gatherings, and it's a 2-day gathering where people just, or like 2 half days, you come together and work on a project together. Any contribution that you can, any amount of time you can contribute, an hour, full day, is helpful. And it's just great. It's a great way to get involved, see what's happening in terms of development of tools and features. And the projects are really driven by the folks who show up and what our interests are and how to make Salesforce better. So it's people who use Salesforce making Salesforce better for ourselves in a lot of ways, and for the community.
That's awesome. Yeah, it sounds like a great opportunity for people to experience the other aspects of Salesforce they wouldn't be able to use or create in their normal day-to-day world, but yet still do good by creating something that will help someone else. So let's do that, guys. Let's get on that.
Through salesforce.org. So you can also look it up there and find it on the Trailblazer community forums.
Cool. I will link it in the show notes for anyone else wants to participate out there, but that sounds super fun. I will definitely look into it myself. That's really awesome. Well, thanks for joining us, Sarah. I hope you had a great time. I had a really good fun time. I
did.
Now know that you're amazing at flows, and I need to add people that know flows to my repertoire because, my 3-element that could have been 1-element flow needs some help. But
it's great.
Yeah, thank you for joining us. And thank you again.
Thank you so much. I had a great time chatting with you, and thanks for having me.